Hey there guys, today I'm doing a deck for Izoni Thousand Eyes, one of the newest commanders to come out of Guilds of Ravnica. She's 2 colorless, 2 black and 2 green for a legendary elf shaman. She has an ability called Undergrowth. That is, when she enters the battlefield, she creates a 1 in black green insect creature token for each creature card in your graveyard. You may pay a black and a green to sacrifice another creature you control. You gain a life and draw a card. So I will start with the non-basic lands. To save time, I'm just going to tell you that the deck runs 19 basics, 9 swamps, and 10 forests. So we'll start with Blooming Marsh. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or fewer other lands. It taps for both a black and a green. Ash Barrens. It is a colorless land, and it taps for a colorless. It has basic land cycling of 1 colorless. If this card is in your hand, you may discard it and search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. Each land is a swamp in addition to its other land types. It makes your forests and all your other lands that don't tap for black also tap for black. But you have to be careful because it also does benefit opponents. Command Tower, the best commander staple land. It adds some mana of any of your commander's colors to your mana pool. Landwar Waste. It taps for a colorless, or you can tap it, take 1 damage to add a black or green to your mana pool. Twilight Mire is a filter land. It taps for a colorless, or you may pay a black or a green, tap it to add 2 black, a black or a green, or 2 green. So it filters your colors in case you don't have the right ones, making it easier to cast Izoni. Gyre Reach Sanitarium. It's a legendary land that taps for a colorless. You may pay 2, tap it, each player draws a card, then discards a card. This card is really important when you're trying to get dredge creatures into the graveyard or anything of that sort. Just be careful because it does make your opponent draw cards also. High Market. This is a great card for the deck. You can tap it for a colorless, or you can tap it to sacrifice a creature you control, and you can gain 1 life. You can use it to protect creatures that are in the threat of being exiled, or you can use it to get dredge creatures or creatures with graveyard effects into the graveyard. Overgrown Tomb, a staple land for most formats. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you pay 2 life, and it taps for a black or a green. And it also counts as a swamp and a forest, so it can be tutored up with cards like Wood Elves. Woodland Cemetery enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a swamp or a forest, and taps for a black or a green. Windswept Heath. You can tap it, pay 1 life, sacrifice it, and search your deck for a forest or a plains card, and put it onto the battlefield. Then you shuffle. Temple of Malady. Sorry, this one's foreign. Well, this card does is when it enters the battlefield tapped. It taps for both a black and green, and you scry 1 as it enters. Cabal Coffers. You can pay 2 and tap this land to add a black to your mana pool for each swamp you control. This card goes really well with Urborg because in each other land you control is also a swamp, so it'll count itself and every other land you control for massive mana. Polluted Delta. You may tap it, pay 1 life, sacrifice Polluted Delta, search your library for an island or a swamp card, and put it into play. Then shuffle your library. Westvale Abbey. There's something I need to show you guys about this. This card is super efficient in this deck because of the amount of creatures you make. And in some cases, you can use it to make a creature. So you tap it for a colorless mana. You can pay 5, tap it, pay 1 life to put a 1/1 black and white creature cleric token into play. And then you can pay 5, tap, sacrifice 5 creatures, and transform it and untap it. It turns into Ormondal the Profane Prince. He is a 9/7 flying lifelink indestructible haste demon. He is very good finisher in this deck, and people don't see him coming. Alright, that is all the non-basic lands, totaling up to 34 lands in the deck. So, I will start with all the 1-drops and go up the scale. The Commander Staple Soul Ring, 1-drop mana rock that taps for 2 colorless. Nature's Claim. It is a 1-drop, 1 green, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Its controller gains 4 life. You'll see in this deck that most of the cards that deal with artifacts and enchantments are on creatures, because I want to have my graveyard filled with creatures for Izoni. But I also run a few to deal with cards like Humility, or when a Topor Orb is out and I cannot deal with enchantments or artifacts otherwise. Birds of Paradise. It taps for 1 mana of any color. And another thing is, you'll see a lot of the ramp in this deck is on creatures, and in the form of mana dorks, because I'm trying to have as many creatures in the graveyard as possible for Izoni's triggers. This card's Phyrexian Reclamation. It is 1 black, and you can pay a 1 black enchantment. You may pay a colorless and a black to pay 2 life, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. It's very good for getting things back from your graveyard. Viscera Seer. She is a 1-drop 1/1 that has sacrifice a creature, scry 1. You'll make plenty of creatures to sacrifice, so you'll be scrying a lot. Entomb. This card lets you search your library for any card and put it into your graveyard. Then you shuffle your library. It's very good for a few cards in here. You will see you can get Dread Return into the yard. You can put Dredge cards in the yard. It's very efficient. Llanowar Elves. Just a 1-drop that taps for a green. Helps you accelerate in the early game. Fyndhorn Elves. Just another Llanowar Elves with another name. There's a lot. Elves of Deep Shadow. One of the only mana dorks to tap for a black that's 1-drop. Might be the only one, actually. But it's a 1-drop. 1/1. Taps for a black and deals damage to you. Stitcher's Supplier. A 1-drop 1/1. When she enters the battlefield or dies, put the top 3 cards of your library in your graveyard. She's great for filling up your graveyard. Caustic Caterpillar. So it's a 1-drop 1/1 that you can also pay to sacrifice it to destroy an artifact or enchantment. Skull Clamp. This card got banned within like the first month it was released. So it's a 1-drop, 1 equip. Equipped creature gets +1/-1, and whenever equipped creature dies, draw 2 cards. So you play Izoni, make a bunch of bugs, just pay 1 and start killing them off to draw tons of cards. Deathrite Shaman. This guy's also banned in almost every format. So he's a 1-drop 1/2. Tap, exile target land card from a graveyard. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. You can pay a black, tap, exile instant or sorcery card from a graveyard each opponent loses to, or pay a green, tap, exile a creature card from a graveyard and gain 2 life. He is very powerful. He can stop flashback, he can stop reanimator decks, he can stop lands decks. He is a very strong 1-drop, almost underrated in Commander. Reanimate. 1-drop sorcery. Put target creature card from any graveyard into play under your control, and you lose life equal to its converted mana cost. Very powerful card. So now I'm at my 2-drops. I put him in the 2-drop because you're most likely never going to hardcast him. His name is Shriekmaw. He is a 3/2 for 4 and a black with fear, and when he enters the battlefield, destroy target non-artifact, non-black creature. But the cool part about him and why I included him is because he's got an evoke cost, which is black and a colorless, which means you may cast him from your hand, and as soon as he enters the battlefield, you sacrifice him. So it's great because then you get to kill something and a creature in your yard for Izoni. Commune with the Gods. You reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature or enchantment from among them into your hand and put the rest into your graveyard. It's a good way to kind of dig for your answers and also fill your yard with other stuff. There's also a lot of enchantments in here. Animate Dead. It's a 2-drop enchantment. You enchant a creature card in a graveyard. When it enters the battlefield, if it's on the battlefield, it loses enchant creature. Okay, it has a lot of text on it. So basically, it brings a creature from the graveyard attached to it. If that enchantment would leave, the creature dies. Or if the creature would leave, the enchantment dies, and it gives the creature -1/-0. Sorry, another foreign card. This is Blood Artist. A 2-drop 0/1 that says whenever a creature dies, my bad, each opponent loses, not each opponent, that's the other guy, his target player loses a life and you gain a life. So it's very good when you make all these tokens and start sacrificing them for value. More acceleration on the guy. Secure Tri-Builder. So he's a 2-drop 1/1. You may sacrifice him to search your library for a basic land card and put it on the battlefield tapped. So he also fills up your graveyard for her. Diabolic Intent. Has additional cost to play Diabolic Intent, sacrifice a creature. It's a 2-drop, and you search your library for a card and put it in your hand. Grisly Salvage. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a creature or land card from among them into your hand. Put the rest into your graveyard. Duskwatch Recruiter. He is something I just added, and he has proven to be a very effective card in the deck. He is a 2-drop 2/2 with Werewolf with pay 2 and a green. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, reveal a creature card among them, and put it in your hand in any order. And if no player cast any spells the last turn, transform Duskwatch Recruiter. Kralin Horde Howler. He is a 3/3 werewolf with creature spells you cast, cost 1 less to cast, and if a player casts 2 or more spells at the beginning of each upkeep, on the last turn, transform them. Satyr Wayfinder. When he enters the battlefield, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them into your hand and put the rest into your graveyard. Mausoleum Secrets. This card is super underrated at the exact moment. It is a 1 and a black for an instant. With Undergrowth, search your library for a black card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Reveal it and put it in your hand. This card is very powerful. With it being an instant speed that puts it in your hand, makes it crazy in this deck. Golgari Thug, one of our important dredge creatures. When he dies, you can put target creature card from a graveyard on top of your library, and he has Dredge 4. So the way Dredge works is if you would draw a card, instead you may put exactly whatever the Dredge number is from the top of your library into your graveyard and return him to your hand. And if you can't, you would draw a card. Altar of Dementia. It's a 2-drop artifact that says sacrifice a creature, target player puts a number of cards equal to that creature's power from the top of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Evolutionary Leap. It is a colorless and a green to play enchantment that says pay a green, sacrifice a creature, reveal from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card and put that card into your hand and the rest on the bottom in a random order. Zolaport Cutthroat. He is a colorless and a black for a 1/1. When him or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. Crowsand Grip. It's a 2 and a green instant with split second, which means it cannot be responded to unless it's with mana abilities, and it destroys target artifact or enchantment. So it can't be countered, so it's one of your only answers for control decks that drop Topo Orb or Humility. Plague Crafter. This guy is a monster. He's 2 and a black for a 3/2. When he enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or a planeswalker. Each player who can't discards a card. Eldritch Evolution. It's a colorless and 2 green sorcery. As an additional cost to cast Eldritch Evolution, sacrifice a creature. Search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost 2 or less, where X is X or less, where X is 2 plus the sacrificed creature's converted mana cost. Put that card on the battlefield and shuffle your library and exile Eldritch Evolution. Very powerful. It allows you to tutor for any of your big creatures. Yahini Undying Partisan. She's 2 and a black. 2/2 with haste. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Yahini and sacrifice another creature, and she gains indestructible until end of turn. She's really good after a board wipe and a good way to kill off your opponents. What else? A 3-drop 1/1 that allows you to search for a forest as it enters, which means you can search for like your shock lands or any of your dual typed lands and put them in the battlefield. and it also comes in untapped, and it's a creature. This is Beastmaster's Ascension. Sorry, it's foreign. So this card says whenever a creature you control attacks, you put a quest counter on it. If it has 7 or more quest counters, creatures you control get +5/+5. So it's a good way to finish people off with your insect tokens or some other tokens you produce in the deck. Eternal Witness. She's 1 and 2 green. When she enters the battlefield, you may return target card from your graveyard to your hand. She's a good way to recur things. Here's another dredge creature. Stinkweed. 2 colorless and a black. Flying. Whenever he deals combat damage to a creature, destroy that creature. So death touch with dredge 5. So if you would draw a card and he's in your graveyard, you can instead put the top 5 cards of your deck in your graveyard and put him in your hand. Emrakul's Evangel. He is really cool. 2 colorless and a green. You can tap, sacrifice him, and any number of other non-Eldrazi creatures, and put a 3/2 colorless Eldrazi horror creature took on the battlefield for each creature sacrificed this way. So he's good to replace your little 1/1 bugs with some good beaters. Pernicious Deed. It's a 3-drop, 1 colorless, black and a green enchantment. You can pay X, sacrifice it, and destroy each artifact, creature, and enchantment with converted mana cost X or less. It's a good way to sweep around board, like artifacts and enchantments, and opponents really don't want to play anything scary when this is sitting out. Grim Horopex. It is a 3-drop, 3/2 with morph. I don't think I've ever morphed this guy in my life. So you may play him face down for 3 colorless, and then you could pay a black to flip him over. And whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you draw a card. Reclamation Sage. It's a 3-drop 2/1 that as it enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. Midnight Reaper. 3-drop 3/2 whenever a non-token creature you control dies. Midnight Reaper deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card. Catacomb Sifter. 3-drop 2/3 devoid. He has no color. And when he enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion. Creature tokens on the... and it has a... sacrifice this creature, add a colorless to your mana pool. And whenever another creature you control dies, that includes tokens, you scry 1. Buried Alive. Search your library for up to 3 creature cards and put them into your graveyard. Then shuffle your library. Very good at putting dredge creatures into your yard or any spells you can flash back. On to the 4-drops. World Shaper. He is a 3/3 Merfolk Shaman. Whenever he attacks, you may put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. And when he dies, put all land cards from your graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. He's very good for getting back all the lands you milled off. And good for milling yourself. You don't really even care if he dies. So you'll just swing him into the biggest threat and just keep hitting him until they block him. Greater Good. This card is a monster, and it's dropped in a lot of price since it came out. It is a 4-drop enchantment. Sacrifice a creature, draw cards equal to sacrifice creature's power, then discard 3 cards. So even if you sacrifice a 1/1 or 2/2, yeah, you're going to discard more cards, but you get to throw them in the graveyard, and you get to still churn through your deck, which in turn is just pure value. Birthing Pod. This card is a monster. It's 3 and a Phyrexian green, which a Phyrexian mana means you can pay the green or 2 life instead of paying it. And then it also has a colorless and a Phyrexian green to tap, sacrifice a creature. Search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature's converted mana cost. Put that card on the battlefield and shuffle your library, and only activate this ability as a sorcery. So this allows you to go up the chain. So you sacrifice a 1-drop, you go to a 2. You sacrifice 2, you go to 3, and you just keep moving up the chain until you get to your big guys. It's kind of a toolboxy card. It's really cool. Really fun to play with. Beast Whisperer. This guy is proven very strong in this deck. He has a 2 green, 2 colorless, 2/3. And whenever you cast a creature spell, you just draw a card. All your creatures replace themselves. Smothering Abomination, another draw card. It's 2 black and 2 colorless for a 4/3 color, a devoid flyer, which means he has no color. At the beginning of your upkeep, you sacrifice a creature. And also, whenever you sacrifice a creature, you get to draw a card. So all the bugs you make with Izoni just turn into free card draw. And mix that with the Skull Clamp. Fun times. Savra. She is one of the biggest monsters in this deck. She is 2 colorless, a green and a black for a 2/2. Whenever you sacrifice a black creature, you may pay 2 life. If you do, each other player sacrifices a creature. And whenever you sacrifice a green creature, you may gain 2 life. The coolest part about her is that the bugs you make with Izoni are black and green. So then it brings in a thing where you can sacrifice your bugs and pay no life. You gain 2, but then you can also pay 2, so you gain nothing or lose nothing, and each of your opponents sacrifices something for each bug you sacrifice. She's a monster. Dread Return. This card is really good in this deck, especially that you can just cast it the first time, throw it in your graveyard, and use it again because it is a 2 colors, 2 black sorcery. You return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It also has flashback, which means you can cast it from your graveyard by sacrificing 3 creatures instead of paying its cost. Then you exile it afterwards. So you can just sacrifice 3 of your bugs to bring back a Shieldred or something. Grave Pact. 3 black and a colorless. Enchantment that says whenever a creature you control dies, each other player sacrifices a creature. Marin of Clan Neltoth. She's a very popular commander for a lot of people. She is a 4-drop, 3/4 legendary human shaman, and whenever another creature you control dies, you get an experience counter. In the beginning of your end step, choose a target creature card in your graveyard. If that card's converted mana cost is less than or equal to the number of experience counters you have, return it to the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. Dictate of Erebos. A 5-drop enchantment with flash, which means you can play it at any time. You can play an instant. And whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent sacrifices a creature. And here's one of your main win cons. Living Death. 3 colorless and 2 black. Each player exiles all creature cards from his or her graveyard, then sacrifices all creatures he or she controls, then puts all cards he or she exiled this way onto the battlefield. So you wipe the board and then replace it with everything from all the graveyards. So in turn, you have a gigantic graveyard, you sacrifice all your dudes, then cast a Living Death, causing your opponent's boards to be wiped, and you have a massive field. Sidisi Undead Vizier. She is a 5-drop 4/6 with Death Touch and Exploit. When she enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a creature. And when she exploits a creature, you may search your library for a card and put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. So she becomes a demonic tutor. That also has a 4/6 Death Touch body. Cascade Breakers. It is a 5-drop 3/4. When it attacks, put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield tapped and attacking for each creature card in your graveyard. This card has proven really strong. I just added it recently. Tindershoot Dryad. 4 and a green for a 2/2 with Ascend. Ascend is if you control 10 or more permanents, you get the city's blessing for the rest of the game. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 green sapling creature token, and saplings you control get a +2/+2 as long as you have City's Blessing. This is, in my opinion, a better Verdant Force. It has a weaker body, but it buffs the creatures, and it's cheaper to play. It's great for this deck. This guy, he's a 5-drop 2/2. His name is Sadistic Hypnotist. He has the ability sacrifice a creature. Target player discards 2 cards from their hand. Play this ability only anytime you can play a sorcery. He can become a monster. If you have enough tokens out, you can literally lock people out of the game with him. Phyrexian Delver. He's a 5-drop 3/2. And when he enters the battlefield, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and you lose life equal to that card's mana cost. It's basically a reanimate on a stick, but it's on a creature, so it fuels Izoni. Krav, one of the best cards in this deck. He's 1 black and 4 colorless for a 3/3 legendary demon. You can pay a black, sacrifice X creatures, target player draws X cards, and gains X life. And you put X +1/+1 counters on him. So he can even sack himself. But you can sack all your bugs, and each bug replaces itself with a card. You gain life and counters on him. He is a force to be reckoned with. Michaeloth. So he is a 5-drop 4/4 with Devour 2. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a 1/1 green sapling creature token for each counter on him. So, Devour basically says as he enters, you can sacrifice any number of creatures. And the number next to Devour is how many counters he gets for each creature sacrificed. Obnixless Unshackled. So I run him because my meta is full of a lot of people who run tutors. He's a 6-drop 4/4 flying trample. Whenever an opponent searches his or her library, that player sacrifices a creature and loses 10 life. And whenever another creature dies, you can put a counter on Obnixless. Down the last few cards. Demon of Dark Schemes, 3 black and 3 colorless for a 5/5 flying demon, and when he enters the battlefield, all other creatures get -2/-2 till end of turn. And whenever another creature dies, you get 1 energy. You may pay 3 mana and 4 energy to put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control tapped. Very strong sweeper for tokens decks, and fills up. You get to just take everybody's things from the graveyard. He's a monster. Protean Hawk. This card is crazy. So he is a 7-drop, 5 and 2 green, 6/6. When he dies, search your library for any number of creature cards with total converted mana cost 6 or less, and put them on the battlefield and shuffle your library. So you could search for 6 1-drops, 2 3-drops, 3 2-drops, or any combination of those numbers as long as they equal 6. You could even search for infinite 0-drops. He is crazy and nasty. If you can keep bringing him back, you can put your whole deck onto the table. The final card, Big Booty Shieldred. So Shieldred is a 7-drop 6/6 with Swamp Walk. And at the beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. And at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, they sacrifice a creature. Yeah, she becomes very strong. She's usually one of your higher end cards to drop and win the game. Some of the deck mostly wins off attrition and sacrificing and recurring your creatures for value. I just want to thank you guys for watching and taking your time to learn about Izoni. I hope you guys have a good time. I'm going to drop a tapped out list underneath to show you guys the deck. Let you guys communicate with me on what updates and stuff you think were good for it. Or if you have any questions, I can always point you to a good way to find some good budget inclusions for the deck. But anyways, thanks guys. Sorry the video was a little long. I wanted to explain a few things for new players. And thanks. You guys are great.